Did you know there's a country with a smaller population than South Dakota that, by historical standards, basically won the Powerball lottery yesterday? Picture this, a small quiet nation that spent decades surviving on sugar and rice suddenly discovers massive oil reserves right in its backyard, more oil than Mexico and even Norway. In 2015, a single discovery turned this forgotten dot on the map into the fastest growing economy on Earth, and now the entire world, from Wall Street to Washington, is watching in real time, asking one big question. Will it become the next Dubai, or just another corruption-ridden hotspot? This country is Guyana. Okay, first, let's clear up the geography because people get this wrong all the time. Guyana is not Ghana in Africa, it's not French Guiana. Guyana is a small country on the northeast coast of South America, wedged between Venezuela, Brazil, and the Atlantic Ocean. And here's a fun twist, it's the only country on the continent where English is the official language. So culturally and politically, it's closer to the Caribbean, and in many ways closer to the US than you might think. Guyana is about the size of Idaho, but only around 800,000 people live there. For most of its history, it was known for dense rainforests and sugar plantations. Economically, it was a textbook post-colonial story, poor, dependent on raw exports, and drained by immigration. If you were young and ambitious in the 90s or early 2000s, your dream wasn't to build Guyana. It was to get a one-way ticket to New York or Miami. Before 2015, Guyana had one of the lowest GDPs per capita in the region. It looked like it would remain a quiet, invisible country on the sidelines of the global economy. But history loves surprises. In May 2015, Guyana hit the jackpot, and it happened thanks to American technology and persistence. Geologists from the Texas oil giant ExxonMobil pulled off what many thought was impossible. About 120 miles offshore, deep beneath the Atlantic seabed, they struck oil. Not just oil, vast oceans of it. Today, proven reserves exceed 11 billion barrels. To put that into perspective, on a per-person basis, Guyana is now richer in oil than Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. This single discovery launched the country straight from the developing world into the top tier of global energy powers, and what's truly shocking is the speed. In most oil projects, it takes about 10 years from discovery to first production. In Guyana, the first oil flowed in just 4 years by 2019, an almost unheard of pace made possible by ExxonMobil's deep water drilling expertise. The economic growth numbers sound like a typo. In 2022, Guyana's economy grew by 62%. In 2024, growth remained solidly double-digit. For comparison, at the height of China's economic miracle, growth was around 10 to 14% a year. Guyana is growing 4 times faster. A country with no oil industry a decade ago is now producing over 600,000 barrels a day, with production racing toward 1 million. At first glance, this looks like a pure capitalism success story. An American company shows up, finds resources, and suddenly everyone should be rich and happy. But when details of the oil contract between Guyana's government and the oil companies became public, the celebration quickly turned into controversy. Many experts called it the deal of the century for ExxonMobil, an outright robbery for Guyana. So why is the 2016 contract so controversial? Because the terms are extremely generous to investors. Under the agreement, the oil consortium, ExxonMobil, Hess, and China's CNOOC can take up to 75% of all oil produced just to recover their exploration and infrastructure costs. What's left is split 50-50 between the companies and the government, and royalties, the basic fee for extracting oil, are only 2%. To critics, this looks like a massive corporation draining a poor country and leaving behind scraps. But from a business perspective, the picture looks very different. Think of it like an episode of Shark Tank. In 2015, Guyana was an extremely high-risk investment. The country had no money, no technology, and no skilled workforce capable of drilling miles beneath the ocean floor. There was a real chance there was no oil at all. ExxonMobil took on 100% of the financial risk. If the project had failed, they would have lost billions, while Guyana wouldn't have lost a single dollar. High risk demands high reward. Without those terms, no rational company would have entered a region with zero infrastructure and uncertain prospects. Ironically, the very contract now labeled exploitative is what made the economic miracle possible in the first place. But try explaining that to someone living in Georgetown. Despite the exploding GDP, around 40% of the population still lives below the poverty line. For most people, the oil billions exist only as numbers on paper or as profits flowing into corporate accounts in Texas, while grocery prices keep rising at home. That growing gap between expectations and reality is creating dangerous social tension. And as if internal challenges weren't enough, the scent of oil and money quickly caught the attention of Guyana's neighbors, turning this story from an economic drama into a full-blown geopolitical thriller. While Guyana is still trying to sort out its internal finances and oil contracts, a much bigger threat has appeared on the horizon, one that could wipe everything out. Imagine winning the lottery, and the very next day your neighbor shows up at your door with a baseball bat and says, "By the way, 2/3 of your house actually belongs to me." That's exactly what's happening to Guyana right now. To the west lies Venezuela, a nation with the largest oil reserves on earth, but an economy devastated by years of socialist experiments, mismanagement, and sanctions. Its leader, Nicolás Maduro, has suddenly remembered a long-forgotten territorial dispute over a region called Essequibo. This is not a small border issue. Essequibo makes up nearly 70% of Guyana's total land area. The dispute goes all the way back to the 19th century, but for decades, while Guyana remained a poor agricultural country, Venezuela barely cared. That changed the moment ExxonMobil found oil, a lot of oil. In late 2023, Venezuela held a so-called referendum where citizens supposedly voted to annex Essequibo. Maduro then unveiled a new official map of Venezuela, with Essequibo already colored in, and ordered state oil companies to prepare operations in the new territories. For Guyana, this is an existential threat. Its military is tiny. It wouldn't last a single day against Venezuela's armed forces, but this is where geopolitics kicks in. For the United States, this is no longer just a dispute between two Latin American countries. This is a direct threat to the assets of America's largest energy company. So when Maduro started rattling sabers, Washington reacted fast. The U.S. announced joint military exercises with Guyana, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken made it clear America supports Guyana's sovereignty. At the same time, Brazil moved troops toward its northern border, a quiet but powerful signal telling Caracas to cool it. Here's the irony. That same ExxonMobil contract so often criticized as unfair turned out to be Guyana's best insurance policy. The presence of American corporate interests practically guarantees protection from Uncle Sam. The oil that could have triggered a war has also become Guyana's shield. But while aircraft carriers and diplomacy can deter external enemies, Guyana will have to face its internal demons alone. The government knows perfectly well that the original deal no longer satisfies the public. So now, we're watching an attempt to rewrite the rules in real time. New laws have been passed for future oil projects, royalties raised from 2% to 10%, a corporate profit tax introduced, limits placed on how much companies can write off as expenses. The goal is simple: regain control and keep more money inside the country. At the same time, the government is pushing hard for local content laws, forcing oil giants to hire Guyanese workers and buy services from local companies. They don't want Guyanese people to be just drivers and cleaners. They want engineers, managers, decision makers. But there's a trap. These fairer rules apply only to future discoveries. The real cash cow, the Stabroek Block, where most of the oil is produced, is protected by the original 2016 contract. Legally, it cannot be changed without ExxonMobil's consent, and unsurprisingly, the company has no desire to give up its profits. Which means Guyana may have to wait many more years before oil money turns into real prosperity for everyone. What we're watching right now is the birth of a new nation, live. Guyana stands at a historic crossroads. Will it become the Norway of the tropics, using its oil wealth to build a sovereign wealth fund, invest in education and infrastructure, and secure prosperity for future generations? Or will it follow the darker path of neighbors like Venezuela or countries like Nigeria, falling victim to the resource curse, where easy money fuels corruption, destroys other industries, and eventually leads to collapse? This isn't just a test for a small country, it's a test for global capitalism itself. Can the interests of giant corporations and a small nation coexist for mutual benefit? Guyana is like someone who just hit the Powerball jackpot. Statistics show that many lottery winners end up bankrupt, with their lives in ruins. But Guyana still has a chance to be the exception. History is being written right now. The next 10 years will define this region for the next century. Guyana's future is still as foggy as its rainforests, but one thing is certain, it won't be boring. If you enjoyed this story, support the channel, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit like. It really helps us tell stories like this. See you next time.